at that moment, Mitch describes having an apotheosis, which I'm sure I'm not going to have the best definition for, but basically like a complete reversal in terms of what was going on inside emotionally. So he went from feeling this kind of horrible sense of loss and despair and rejection to recognizing that there was something about his gay soul that he was seeing mirrored in Dr. Frankenstein's creature. And so I found that story really stimulating, and Mitch, of course, there's a lot more that happened after that, and he went on to be very creative in terms of working with his feelings around that TV movie. But I found that really significant as I was focusing on this particular chapter. And one thing that happened for me, this is a much, much lesser version of that, but it reminded me of what I had been reading. It actually happened just a couple days ago. And I was at Trader Joe's, and I was buying a lot of ketchup. I eat a lot of ketchup. And and sometimes, for those of you who go to Trader Joe's, sometimes people will the cashiers will comment on what you're buying. And this guy was, this cute guy at the cashier there says, "Ketchup boy," just like that. And I was like, whoa, and he called me boy also, and so I instantly felt like this almost like erotic impulse, or this impulse to want to play with him or relate with him. And then almost at that moment I had all these other feelings like, well, is this guy straight? Is he mocking me? What's going on? So this place in me that wanted to be playful and open and feel good about myself quickly turned into basically this internalized homophobic state where I was, because I wanted to respond, but then I felt, I didn't know if he was mocking me, and also I felt embarrassed about the ketchup, but what it led to was this feeling actually of an experience of, I started to withdraw from, and I became actually distant, and I wanted to get out of there, and I wanted to kill him. This always brings up that part. Just to make a point about that. So my tendency is to go towards fear and anxiety. I tend to be much more aware of my fear and anxiety than my rage and hatred. And I think part of it is because I don't feel entitled to my anger and hatred, and also I think I'm probably afraid. I know I'm afraid, actually, I'm not probably, of intense feelings of aggression and hatred in me, I think on account of having to deal with so much homophobia and self-hatred in my early environment. So I appreciate you bringing it up. It's really important. It's an important issue, actually. And it's hard. It's hard for me to stay connected with my outrage, and Chris helps me a lot with that. So in any case, so that was kind of my analogous version of my experience around my own challenge in terms of dealing with my internalized homophobia. It's basically going on all the time. So here I was describing one moment in time, but it's actually happening here with you, with where I'm wanting to connect and feel related, and there's like an impulse to want to come out more, and then I can feel what I'm imagining is judgment, and I'm not safe, and all those issues around feeling unloved and rejected basically resurface. And so one way I look at Uranian psychoanalysis is it helps provide the tools and the support to both open up to really profound levels of, for me, insecurity and self-hatred and aggression and all these parts of myself that are really hard to feel and experience. But if those parts of myself can be more integrated, then gradually, I've been having an experience of feeling more whole, and like I can be a real person, and I can be all of myself and not just part selves. So I'm really grateful and inspired by the opportunity to learn about tools that can help me as a gay man do that.
All right, that's your summary of the...
That's my...
That's all about you.
Yeah, narcissistic. There's a narcissistic shadow here.
Well, but that's one of the points I was going to make is that that you can see that the way we present this material is not your typical didactic form, as Doug was trying to describe. But the essence of Mitch's work is all about what does it mean to be real? What does it mean to be oneself as gay? And how we're trying to demonstrate here, not just through talking about what it is we're talking about, but through trying to live the ideas. How do we embody that? How do we experience and play that so that we're not separating out the business from the personal, like most scenes today are. We're saying the business and the personal are all the same. We can't separate them out, and so this is a work in progress to liberate ourselves as gay. And we've been doing it for many, many, many years. And the more, it's almost like there's a John Lennon song. The more I know, the less I know. the more I learn, the less I know.
That's good.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Mitch Walker, in a way, is all about. That if we're really trying to seek this ethical challenge of the modern or the contemporary challenge of gay liberation, which is to resist the temptation to assimilate into this, this heterosexist, breederistic, anti-psychological, racist ism, all these isms, and it's all these isms are rooted, as Doug was saying, in the shadow, in the problem of how people don't deal with their unconscious, and then that gets projected. Their demons get projected. We could say, all these, Democrats, Republicans, whoever they are, they're out there, ISIS, bombing Paris. It's all the same problem. At essence, psychologically speaking, it's the problem of taking ownership of one's own personal shadow. And Doug was, we're each trying to demonstrate that this has to be the new stage of gay liberation, where we gay people have, could be the models, of a whole new epic, a whole new era in human existence that is about trying to be real and genuine with the depths of what is so terrifying to deal with and so difficult and so, understandably, we all have all these defenses and resistances to dealing with our own shit. And like what Dustin is saying, hopefully we can, each learn how to set up scenes for ourselves that are safe enough to deal with the stuff that's not safe. How do we do that? It's a really big challenge. I wish we had 5 hours here today, because I wish I could talk to all of you and relate to all of you and help, facilitate something that would be really amazingly different, and gay and lesbian and bi and whatever, and just show up and try to. Each of us right now, as you guys were talking, I was thinking, I have to do this, I have to do that, and then there's me. I have to talk about me. I was born in Hollywood, and I was suffered as a little kid when I was adopted, and all of that. And I imagine that each of you has your own version of all sorts of stuff that would be really fun and cool to open up and deal with and hash out and see how we all relate with our own issues and our violence and our, stuff that is so scary and, it's scary, it's hard to deal with, it's overwhelming. And then Doug a minute ago, you said Uranian Eros wasn't God. You said it was, so it's not God. That's safe for Doug to say it's not God. But in a way,
it is, yeah.
In a way, not a Christian God, not the normal religious sense of
not
God.
very differentiated on my part.
Psychological.
A psychological
Imagine
God.
there's something divine
Yes.
about being, this
Yes.
core experience of being, that there's a divine presence, and we can imagine that presence in the form of Uranian Eros, as you guys have been, I think, really nicely describing. But this is about this book here today. How can we use this book as a model for becoming gay liberation activists in our work as therapists? And many people, that idea is an extraordinarily controversial idea, because we're not supposed to be activists as therapists. We're supposed to be neutral, and we're supposed to, especially with this, this increasingly insurance industry controlled way of having to do, paint by numbers therapy with people, 8 sessions or less. I would say it's extraordinarily oppressive, and so how do we be activists when the zeitgeist that we live, the times we live in, is where you're supposed to be neutral, you're supposed to be there for your client, you're supposed to let the client lead. It's of course, but that's too simplistic. If you're doing depth work, if you're Jungian, if you're psychoanalytically oriented, if you want to have a self, and you're trying to encourage your client to be him or her or their self. How do you do that? You know, it's antithetical, really, I would say, to this increasingly oppressive heterosexist world we live in. You know, and it's a great challenge. You know, how do we struggle with working with our own countertransference? If you go away from this meeting today with anything, it's really about countertransference. It's how can I be myself as an LGBTQA therapist, whatever I am, whoever I am, even straight. You know, how can I be who I am and yet do that in a way that encourages who I'm working with to be him or herself? And that's always a very difficult and oftentimes scary struggle. It's hard. And we want to embrace that challenge. So, the fourth chapter, of Gay Liberation at the Psychological Crossroads, a commentary on the future of homosexual ideology. And Roger read the statement for his chapter. The title, right. And then the title for the chapter number 4 is Gay Liberation at a Psychological Crossroads, semicolon, the composition and scope of contemporary Uranian psychoanalysis as a homosexual realizational tool of bejeweling initiatory possibilities. That's on page 101. Bejeweling initiatory possibilities. Now he's, you know, people yawn, people look around. this book, I want to talk about this book. Is really fucking hard to read. It's not easy. That's why we don't sell hardly any.
There's psychological honesty.
That's why very few people come to get involved with the Institute. It's really hard. And we're really weird guys. And it's not just black people and trans that have a hard time with us. It's everybody. We have a hard time with it. And Mitch is trying to talk about something that is beyond what most people, as Dustin was talking about, and Roger, it's beyond what we normally are used to dealing with. We're, especially these days, social media, Facebook, it's increasingly superficial. Everything is about superficial forms of narcissism and performativity. You know, let's perform. Look good on camera. You know, it has to look good. Fuck looking good. How do we be ourselves? In a world that's all about looking good and performing and making sure everybody likes us. Like. How do we, you know, we were trying to deal with the shadow of homosexual self-realization. And we're trying to deal with the divine nature of homosexual being, and that our genital amative yearnings have a godlike presence at essence. And to encounter that is like Moses encountering the burning bush. I mean, if we were to really try to open up in a Jungian way this transpersonal dimension of our existence, how do we do that? Even as we're sitting here right now, you're listening to me talk. But what I want to do is encourage you to, you know, look at this book if you do try to read it. Good luck. Because it's going to be very hard to skim through it. And most of us are trained to skim through things. Yeah. It's not about skimming. It's about meditating, really. It's about saying, I really want to take some time and try to hear what Mitch is saying. And he's going to use words, 1 second, okay? I'll get to you. He's going to use words that, you know, are going to, you know, I don't want to pay attention to it, or it seems narcissistic, or it's his own trip, and it's going to, I have all these feelings about it. How about, I'm going to sit down and try to appreciate what he's saying, because he's saying something that nobody else talks about in writing, which is gay liberation as a psychological experience, and how that can get developed. And you have to be able to deal with your own violence, your own shadow, your own unconscious. We're assuming here that if we're gay or lesbian or LGBT, that we grow up with these defenses and protecting this very divine, sensitive place inside, and that we're going to encounter these violent defenses that, you know, that say, I don't want to do it, I don't want to feel this stuff, I can't handle it, it's too much. Like Doug was nicely saying, I just want my, you know, to go on Facebook and dissociate and, you know, live my normal life. It's a lot easier. You know, in that sense, it's an ethical imperative, what we're suggesting. If you're interested in being an LGBT